Hello, my geeky, gutsy listeners, and welcome to episode 5. Special episode for you today as my good friend J. Matthew Scruggs stops by, and we discuss the neo-Western murder mystery Wind River, starring Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen of Marvel fame. One piece of housekeeping before we get into the show. Since the taping of our last episode, we have launched as a podcast, and I could not be more honored and thankful to the support you guys have shown in your downloads, comments, and emails. Thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to us. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take the time to rate, review, and subscribe. It does help get our name out there and get more people interested in the show. Also, feel free to stop by our Facebook page, drop a comment, and see the latest news on the show. Lastly, make sure you tell your friends and family about the show. Word of mouth can be a big help in getting us a second wave of subscribers and keeping this train moving. And now, on with the show. So, thanks for doing this, number one. Very, very excited. I always leave it up to the guest to pick the movie. You presented me with 3 options. So it was Wind River, which is the one we picked. What were the other 2?
Hell or High Water.
And then the damn it, what's the other one?
I don't even know.
Sicario.
No, I know why you said that, but no. Hell or High Water, Wind River, or Hereditary.
Hereditary. Okay, so I'm curious as to what prompted the 3 choices.
All right, so Hell or High Water or Wind River, I knew you were going to go with. Well, I thought, okay, maybe he'll ask me this question on the front end. Are we rolling right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We're recording,
Oops. Man. My bad. I didn't mean to get so deep on my personal content.
No. You're fine. I'll cut all that out.
Sweet. So those 2 movies, Taylor Sheridan, right?
Right.
Screenwriter, director, kind of really the linchpin for these films coming about. And,
yeah, for sure.
And so, huge fan of his now. But
so he did 3 movies altogether, in were loosely a series, I would say. Same general idea and principle behind the movies. I don't think there's any of the same characters. But the third one is the Sicario, which you did not pick.
Yeah. I should have just done the trifecta, so you had to then land on one of these. But Sicario, I feel like, is outplayed. It's kind of overplayed from a, I don't know, whatever you're doing here, the podcast, right? Sicario was ripped apart from all facets of movie production. Film.
Definitely the most popular of the 3, though.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of picking Sicario, you picked
the 2, right? Hell or High Water, huge fan. Ben Foster's in that. I don't know how you feel about him as an actor, but I think he typically plays the same role. But again, Taylor Sheridan, and obviously did a little research, not just for this, but I fell in love with those movies, right? So they're what would be considered, I guess, a modern day Western.
Right.
So, it just so happened, right? Like we watched Sicario, like Megan and I generally liked it. Like, I obviously as a man, I'm like, yes, pretty sick movie. I think we talked more about John Krasinski and the fact that what's her name is John Krasinski's wife. And
right. Emily Blunt.
Yeah, Emily Blunt. So plays a hodgepodge of characters throughout her movies, and we talked about her accent. But then I was like, man, this movie's really good. And then weeks later, we watched, I bought it because it was like one of those Apple movies, not maybe $10.99, $9.99, Hell or High Water, and I'm like, this has a really good cast. Chris Pine, Ben Foster, who's the guy from the movie Alec and I Made You Watch, The White Wall. Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges from The Dude, obviously. I mean, he's what?
Yeah, Big Lebowski. But so we watched that, and again, modern day Western. Maybe that's why I loved it. Maybe I loved it just because of the general notion of like simple problem set and these four characters kind of revolving around each other. But now we're talking about a movie that I did not pick. But either way, Megan's like, hey, that's the dude that wrote Sicario. Like Taylor Sheridan wrote Sicario. And I was like, Taylor Sheridan, I know that name. Sons of Anarchy. He was
Right.
the sheriff. And then I started connecting dots. Ultimately, this dude's uncles were like U.S. marshals and deputy marshals. And that's where he gets, I think he draws a lot of.
So you think Sicario is the weaker of the three? Is that what I'm picking up on?
No, I don't. I just think collectively, both Hell or High Water and then Wind River, he had a lot more to tell in those stories, right? Sicario seemed like kind of a contrived plot that was more of a fan getter.
Hmm.
I don't even think he probably thought it was going to do as well as it did. It had a good turnout, I think, with just general audience, as opposed to his other two movies had individual. Yeah, I'm smacking my lips. Jeez, not good for this. Uh, but I think he had a little more story to tell, and so it plays out better as a screenwriter, right? I think he delivers the story better in Wind River. I don't know. What did you think? You haven't said it yet.
So it's funny that you picked Hell or High Water or Wind River, because these are Hell or High Water I have seen before. I do like all the actors in that movie. It was recommended to me. I forgot who recommended it, but I ended up watching it and I thought it was a pretty decent movie. Sicario I have not seen. I picked Wind River out of your options only because, knowing nothing about it, the description describes it as a noir detective murder mystery type movie, and that is my go-to genre. I love that genre, although I do think it's very hard for somebody to pull that off successfully. So I picked this for that reason. I didn't I didn't hate the movie. Um, my opinion when it comes to movies are usually very extreme or dead in the center. So I have movies that I hate, movies that I love, and then movies that I'm kind of indifferent about. And I think this kind of lands in that indifferent, you know, area. And the reason for that is because it when I think noir, I think Sherlock Holmes struggling to solve the case. You're looking for clues and piecing things together, and then having this aha moment, and then figuring it out, and then you have this long explanation at the end where they tells you, this is what I came up with out of all the clues. This movie, although very good, there really was no mystery behind it. Um, and we'll go through it and kind of where in the movie it fell off for me, but essentially, you have a character discovers a body, goes to the logical, where'd the body come from, finds another body. Okay, well, where'd that body come from? The killer. The end. I mean, there was no, it was kind of a direct path and no deviation. And well, I agree with you. It's definitely a modern Western, just like Hell or High Water. And it's got a subplot that I think was very rich and very a story that needed to be told, with the whole Native American aspect of it. The reason for me watching the noir aspect just wasn't there for me, and that's kind of where it fell off.
Mm. I think murder mystery, right? I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head, but the murder mystery really, consider this, right? Is yeah, the pieces kind of fit, I guess, for the film. Kind of seemed like it was linear and very direct from point A to point B, or I guess point Z in this case, right? They got to the end state very quickly, but I mean, if you really consider it, and you hit the subplot nuance of him having a daughter who
Right.
clearly passed away in some similar fashion, right? Like due to the Native American existence and maybe the actual attention that they get from investigative policing and detectives,
Right.
right? So I think that was in itself, and I'm assuming Taylor Sheridan had that intent or purpose, right? Is they were trying, that's what you're trying to discover as a viewer. That mystery, like, really, is that dot or those dots ever going to be connected for you? Or are you just going to kind of keep crawling towards that subplot as this, as the main plot is developing. So I thought I thought the same thing, kind of like, oh, like great, generally pretty good actors, right? Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, they've reassembled or maybe assembled.
Right.
Um,
I don't think the Avengers were involved in this.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so Jeremy Renner is one of the two main stars in the movie. Interesting enough, Jeremy Renner was actually he wrote the movie for Jeremy Renner. He always had intended to cast Jeremy Renner. At the time the movie was casting, however, he was tied up with the Avengers movies. I want to say it was the first Avengers movie that he was tied up in. Anyway, they start doing some other casting. They get the co-star there, Elizabeth Olsen, who I'm a fan of, both for her acting style, and I just think she's an awesome person. She gets cast for the movie long before, about a year before the shooting starts. She's been in two Avengers movies at this point. Um, and Jeremy Renner's schedule opens up a month before filming. He hops on. The actor that they cast originally ended up backing out,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts off with him shooting a coyote. He is in full winter camouflage in the middle of a field, and he is pegging off a coyote like he's shooting an enemy, in the field.
Hence the reason I love this movie immediately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you immediately get the vibe from him. Well, first, before we even see him, I want to point out one thing that I actually wrote down that I love. We have a very classic title card for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I don't think enough movies do that nowadays. A lot of your 90s movies did it, and for some reason it became less popular. But you have a very, he's walking across the snow, Wind River comes up, title of the movie. I love that.
Oh yeah, a good delivery.
Yeah. So you find out that he works for Fish and Wildlife, and he works on the reservation, basically getting rid of the predators, shooting coyotes. There's a subplot in the movie where he's hired to kill a mountain lion or a mountain lion family, which I really I don't understand that subplot a little bit. I mean, I guess the parent cub thing, like it keeps coming back to the whole parent child relationship throughout the movie. Maybe that had something to do with it, or
Yeah,
just the idea of hunter.
yeah. I honestly, so I think I've seen this movie 3 or 4 times because it was on Netflix, right? So
Mhm.
that was another reason I liked this movie when Megan and I started talking about it, is because I was like, "Whoa, was this even in theaters? Like, did this come out in theaters?" And it did.
Mhm.
I did not know that. But the same thing, right? One of the things is someone was telling me about this movie. Hey, it's on Netflix now. You can actually watch it on Netflix. I was like, well, I'm game immediately. And they were like, oh yeah, they shot this movie and basically from start to finish because of the confined window for Jeremy Renner and in like 40 days. They did
Yeah.
all the footage. Sorry, I'm not going along with you on this
No,
journey.
no, no, you're fine. This is perfect. Yeah, so
But
it goes to Sundance first. It's
yeah,
released in Sundance in January 2017. Comes out to worldwide audiences August 2017, and then obviously goes on to France and Europe and UK and stuff. Yeah, they shot it in 40 days.
which is just crazy to me. I mean, that's not typical, right?
No, I mean a typical film shoot. 40 days is definitely on the faster end. Most movies are going to be wrapped up in probably 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
With it, occasionally you got movies like Lord of the Rings that shot for like 2 years, but they also shot all three movies at once, so that
Yeah.
had a lot to do with it.
Like obviously changes in geography, changes in where they're setting this up. I believe they actually shot this in either Utah or Nevada and not in Wyoming.
Yeah,
So I can't remember because he's based most of his movies out of those areas. But yeah, so again, right. But like you said, Jeremy Renner meant for this part, and then obviously at the onset of the movie, I don't know where I guess the appeal factor is for different people, but I think for me it's like, hey, Jeremy Renner is a phenomenal actor. He portrayed, even though I would say most of his roles are pretty pretty similar to Denzel Washington in a sense, right? Like, hey, Denzel's meant to play this. They read this character knowing Denzel. I feel like a lot of characters, not unbeknownst to the writers, or they're portraying an individual that Jeremy Renner just puts on screen, right? So even though he was definitely meant for this role, it just the whole time I'm like, oh, I'm watching Jeremy Renner. You know?
Yeah. And that's to me that's not a positive. I mean, Jeremy Renner portrays the same guy, manly, tough kind of portrayal in a lot of his roles, and that's an issue to me. I think having an actor have these subtle nuances that are different in each character is a way of getting them to stand out and have separate performances.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with somebody like Jeremy Renner, very good at the character he portrays, but you're going to find out over the course of his career, especially post Marvel, that he's going to be typecasted pretty heavily into these same roles because this is what he plays. But so he kills a coyote. He takes the carcass into town. Again, he makes a brief comment that he works for Fish and Wildlife. It's not brought up very very often in the movie. He tells everybody he's a hunter or he's a predator. I think he says that a couple times. He goes to pick up his son, drives his son onto the res, and you find out that he's no longer with the mother. He's dropping the son off at the grandfather's house, all right? Grandfather's on the res.
Yep.
One of the other things I wanted to point out is during the drive on the res, he does this flash to the American flag, which is being flown upside down, which we know, and I think most people know that is a sign of distress, that you're under attack or at war on a base.
Mm-hmm.
So the res is portraying that they are in a bad situation. So he goes on to the res, where he is told about the mountain lion, to track the mountain lion down. He hops on his snowmobile, drives out to do some tracking, comes across a dead body. Am I missing anything important so far?
No. I mean, I guess me watching this 3 or 4 times and going back through it, and not really recently either. So I mean, I don't know if I did my justice to you, but I was like, no, I've seen this movie enough, and I read about it. So I wanted to watch it again, but I also didn't want to take away from the fact of like, hey, I picked this movie as one of the movies for a reason. It's because where you say, hey, maybe it's not by any means a bad movie, but it's kind of middle of the road for you. For me, right? So it was the little things. It was the nuanced kind of protector's mentality that his character projected, and the way he packed things up, the way he was very pragmatic with his preparation to get on the snowmobile. So those things.
You're 100% right. I mean, that to me is what makes it a middle of the road movie and not a bad movie. Yeah. Is that his character definitely has these moments where you could tell he's taking a lot of preparation in the execution. I mean, and not just in what he physically does when it comes to getting on the snowmobiles and packing up his weapons and dressing for the occasions and stuff like that, but in just his comments to Elizabeth Olsen's characters. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. He finds the body. The body is essentially in the middle of nowhere. He calls the FBI because the reservation itself does have police, but they make a comment in the movie, the reservation, and this is an actual reservation. The Wind River Reservation does truly exist. It's about the same size as Rhode Island, and they have a total of 6 police in the entire reservation. So when matters like this happen, when I say matters like this, murder or something to an escalated level, they don't call local or state authorities. They call the FBI because the FBI is the only branch that has jurisdiction on the reservation. Mm-hmm. So they call the FBI to come investigate the body. And this is where Elizabeth Olsen shows up. She shows up by herself. She is relatively new to the FBI. This isn't like her stereotypical first case and, she's fresh out of school or anything like that, but she's definitely green behind the ears.
Which they showed, right? Same thing. They did a good kind of opposite uh, personality, right? So she was not prepared for. You think most people look at the weather, kind of consider the subarctic temperatures, essentially, right? Like I could be exaggerating a bit, but did not even consider like, oh, I'm going to need legitimate tundra type gear here. She just
Right.
shows up
She
like she,
shows up with the jacket on. She has a winter jacket on,
yeah,
but essentially nothing else. I mean, she doesn't have gloves, hat. She doesn't even have boots, I don't think. And you bring up a great point. They do play opposite type personalities. What I like about her character is they didn't pull the stereotypical green or I'm a rookie and I don't know anything. I need somebody to show like her character is is fresh to the job, but you also get the sense that she's trying.
oh
She
yeah,
wants to learn, she wants help. Um and she's corrected a couple times as far as get the right gear on. You're traveling out to the middle of the winter forest blizzard. You got to wear the right gear. So she does. Her and Jamie Renner go out to the body, and it's at this point where Jeremy Renner he presents himself, tells her what he does, and she says, I'm going to need your help. You obviously know what you're doing. You know what you're talking about. He makes a couple comments about tracks and it's where she came from. He knows the area. So Elizabeth Olsen's character says, help me out. Help me track down what's going on here. They get back to the morgue and they have this confrontation with the coroner who wants to rule the death on, is it not natural causes? He's saying basically that she died because of exposure.
yeah. She died because of exposure and not because somehow she was forced into the elements, right? So
Right.
it automatically rules out murder, which prevents ultimately additional FBI agents or FBI assets and resources, right?
Right. Yeah, she makes the comment that if it's not a murder, the FBI doesn't have jurisdiction and she's going to be called away from the case. And the coroner says, listen, I can't put murder as the cause of death, but she's not out running barefoot in the snow, presumably I think it was like 6 miles or 3 miles,
Mhm.
because she wants to. Like this clearly she was murdered. That just wasn't the cause of the
Or there,
death,
yeah, there was some kind of malicious involvement, or with he was definitely making the inference that there was something that happened, obviously. But again, right, I thought that was a pretty critical moment in the movie to really establish what Sheridan's trying to say, right? That again, this is another situation where the reservation, the res and the people that live there aren't treated as equals. They're not given the same value on life, which is
Right.
another reason. I mean, not to get too heavy into it, but I was kind of hoping you'd pick this movie because it's kind of very significant considering our current societal and civil unrest and people placing certain values on of lives, right? So I thought, I don't know, man. Yes, there were some simple point A to point B plot developments, but again, right, I think that was a critical moment in the movie, and for the most part captured well. To start laying up, right, like he's delivering this message slowly initially, right? Of all right, you're already seeing, it's because of the austere terrain and the environment, and what is really the promise of this res and the land and the people. But then they get there and they they have minimal footprint from law enforcement. They have,
Hmm.
obviously seeking the help of the FBI, even though Jeremy Renner and the who was one of the characters he had consulted with. I can't even remember. Billy.
The, so there's another actor. His name is Graham Greene. He plays the sheriff on the res.
Yep.
He's one of these actors. If anybody gets a chance, look him up. He's been in a ton of movies: Dances with Wolves, Green Mile, half a dozen TV shows. He's the type of actor that everybody has seen. You're gonna know him as soon as you see him, but you're not gonna know him by name. He's been in a million things. He's just not the star in anything.
Yeah. So, to me, him collectively and Jeremy Renner, their discussions, their talks about and kind of looking at her when she initially stepped out of the vehicle, and they knew that what they were dealing with, right? They knew they were dealing with somebody who wasn't prepared, but they weren't. they weren't prepared for the amount of fight or, you know, the actual intent that she had to serve the job and then to do the job well. So I think you started seeing that with her frustrations mounting, obviously talking, you know, while they were at the morgue and kind of discussing that. So
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is the subplot that we were talking about earlier, and I think this subplot is what saves the movie. It's the idea that they're highlighting that not only do these injustices exist for the Native Americans and life on the res, but there's almost an acceptance among the people. I mean, when only one FBI agent shows up, when she's clearly, green, when they're fighting to even get recognition and get more help from the FBI, there seems to be this kind of acceptance by the sheriff and by Jeremy Renner's character of like, yeah, this is standard. This is not something that we're new to. We don't like it, but what are we going to do? Type attitude.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they immediately go to the family of the victim. They have this scene where they're interviewing the father. Elizabeth Olsen's character tends to be a little more forceful, kind of wants to know, where was she? Why? He says she was out with her boyfriend. Have you ever met the boyfriend? No, I never met the boyfriend. They've been dating for a while, though. Well, how did you not meet? Well, she's 18. She's an adult. She's going to do what she wants. They have sort of a confrontational conversation. Jeremy Renner clearly knows the gentleman, assuming they're friends. And this is also where we start getting peppered in some comments about Jeremy Renner's daughter. They're not very upfront in the beginning with what happened, but you can clearly recognize that something happened to the daughter. She's not around anymore. That might have been what spurred the divorce, and that he shares some emotional connection with what the father is going through with the loss of the daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was an interesting thing. The father, Gil Birmingham, right? He's in Hell or High Water, right? So again,
another one of those actors that's been in a ton of things, but you probably wouldn't recognize him by name.
Yeah, so plays a pretty good role. Obviously, a lot of the roles he plays are very similar, but not to take away from what he does, right? Like he's a very good on screen actor. I think he quickly embodies a character that people can latch onto and kind of connect with, and it did the same to for me this time, right? I see him, I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize the actor, but ultimately quickly allows the plot to develop with not a lot of obviously not a lot of dialogue, but you already know, okay, the dad and how he perceives this, and the fact that obviously this is destroying him inside, but he realizes how he's got to be strong for the wife, who's really the one that's going to take this being notified of the death of their daughter, right, and how badly it affects them. So
so this is a really weird scene that this is one of the scenes in the movie that I didn't really understand why it was put in there the way it was. So he has the confrontation with Elizabeth Olsen, and Elizabeth, her character says, "I'd like to speak to the mom," basically saying, "You're not giving me any information. I want to talk to the mom. Something's weird here." And he says, "By all means, she's in the bedroom. Go in." And she goes in. She pokes her head in. The mom is in there, obviously crying, bawling her eyes out, but also cutting her arm pretty severely. I mean, there's some decent amount of blood here. And Elizabeth Olsen's character closes the door and then just kind of like, all right, clearly I'm not going to be talking to the mom. So one, I don't understand what's the point in making the mother, because at this point, the mom is not in the rest of the movie. There's no other scenes with the mother at all. There's no other reference to her cutting herself. Elizabeth Olsen doesn't even come out and tell the rest of the group, like, hey, she's in there hurting herself. There's no reference to this whatsoever. And then as an FBI agent, she doesn't attempt to like stop her at all. So this was one of those scenes where I'm like, I don't understand. Like, this must just be another attempt to show how bad life is for these people, I guess.
Yeah, I see. I think I took these little small, I don't know. because there's several of them in this movie, like little anecdotal situations where you're like, I treated it just like a person who's watching a movie, right? Like, well, I'm not supposed to know what's going on there. It's supposed to add or layer in a dramatic effect, right? Like this woman is cutting herself. I'm assuming that's her way of coping with pain, right? People take drugs, drink alcohol.
Sure.
This lady's a cutter, right? Like, and I'm not, by no means am I like, saying that should be taken lightly, but I think that's what Elizabeth Olsen realizes is like, whoa, this is beyond my triage. Like, I am not a professional to this degree.
Right.
I'm going to go back to the dad who was giving me kind of the Stonewall effect and just see if I can break that down a little bit. Like, I mean, because from what I remember, she walks in with crazy Elizabeth Olsen eyes afterwards. Back into the room, like, are you aware of what's going on back there? Your pillows and your wife's arms are getting shredded right now. And so
it's definitely an odd scene.
Yeah, definitely the same. I mean, I guess the same way, but like at the end of the day, it got the point across to me like, okay, she is not going to deal with this well, and the family is obviously devastated, right? So I go back to, and that's why, like, I don't know, man, this guy's got a simple way of telling stories, but still getting a point across really quickly. I think you're right, though. Maybe it leaves some to be desired, like for a more developed plot. But it also allows him to say, hey, within 2 hours, I'm going to get you from like start of murder mystery,
right,
and oh, by the way, I'm going to show you glimpses of what's just happening in chaotic real life, right? Like, so that's, I don't know. I mean, and he, again, I don't want to jump ahead because I'm already bad at that, but no, I think that was a necessary part, and I think she could have been doing a lot, though. I mean, she could have been bumping lines of blow, like,
yeah.
like
I mean, that
something to show she is in a bad state. So he went with that. Yeah, I don't know exactly why. That's not something that's worth Googling, like why Taylor Sheridan exercised this specific option. But yeah, I think for the most part, it got the point across, right? So,
yeah.
If I have it.
So then while Elizabeth Olsen is going to check on the mom, Jeremy Renner character and the father have this conversation where, again, they acknowledge their connection with the daughters. The father also tells Jeremy Renner, if you find whoever did this, you kill him. And basically, I mean, he says something along the lines of, don't bring him back or don't save him, or I don't know, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. But he gets the point across. So obviously the next logical step, let's go check out the boyfriend. Let's find out who the boyfriend is. Maybe the brother. Maybe she's got a brother. Maybe the brother knows who the boyfriend is. So the brother is a junkie. They go to some random trailer.
Yeah, it was a meth trailer.
Meth trailer, yeah. They show up. The brother shows up to the door, or not the brother. Another kid opens the door and proceeds to have the conversation with the sheriff, basically saying, it's implied that this guy has been in and out of the judicial system. He's been arrested a few times. He's obviously high right now. Where's the brother? Oh, I don't know. He's not here. Oh, by the way, my parole officer told me to give you something. And he pulls out a can of like pepper spray or mace and maces them all. Me backtrack. Jeremy Renner's character is not there at the door. He goes with them to the trailer, but follows some tracks around the back of the trailer. Snowmobile tracks, I believe. Elizabeth Olsen and the sheriff get pepper sprayed. At this point, Elizabeth Olsen, face full of pepper spray, eyes burning, decides to draw her weapon and then enter the trailer because that seems like the most logical thing to do rather than just wait for the effects to go away. The two of the three guys in the trailer come running out of the back. Jeremy Renner clubs them with a shovel and incapacitates them, while the third guy, the one who did the pepper spraying, decides to pull a gun on Elizabeth Olsen, who proceeds to light him up. I think she shoots him it's like 73 times in the chest and torso.
Yeah, she went range training on him. I guess the pepper spray and everything that she had going on, she knew in her head, I think at that point she was going to be able to say, hey, I was to the point of no recollection of shots fired, and oh, by the way, if I'm ever going to get away with an accidental shooting, this is it, right? So
Yeah, which, I mean, to be clear, she's within her right. He pulls a weapon and aims it at her. He's already shown that he's been violent towards law enforcement, moments ago. So
mhm.
I think she's well within her right to shoot him. Um, he dies. They go to the brother, who's outside at this point in handcuffs, and proceeds to kind of interrogate him. He provides not much information other than the guy's name. And then is obviously upset that his sister died. Jeremy Renner then proceeds to point out to Elizabeth Olsen these tracks, these snowmobile tracks, and kind of shows where they are heading into the distance, and that there's something up there that we should investigate. And with the storm coming in, we should do it now. And Elizabeth Olsen's like, no, I want to check out where the boyfriend is. We have some information on him. He was working as a security guard for the local like oil company, something along those lines. I forgot it. I don't remember if it's an oil company specifically.
Yeah, I think
But
there was a point to that, though, right? Like yeah, it was it was a oil company or an oil pursuit company, right? Like long-term oil pipeline investment,
right.
and they knew, right? I think it's that's really where I get hooked. So I won't give away your next unfold of,
No, you're fine. By all
but
means.
I mean, that's think about it. Like, okay, this property has been basically probably bought up for pennies, and now, because again, right, they don't really get into it, and I thought they would have, but to show the injustice, right, of land accusation, land accrual, or
Acquisition.
land acquisition and procurement, and here, now there's probably a huge amount of oil and natural resources that they're going to be able to kind of pull from the land. So I think that said something too, right? They've got this internal security unit. I don't even know. I can't remember what they were called, but they had some kind of patches, like literally security guards, like post 4 years in the Marine Corps. Just they think they're they think they're hot shots with guns, right? And to maybe some degree they are, but it just seemed like the type of gig an 0311 gets out and he's like, oh sweet, I got a job in Colorado or Wyoming or somewhere.
Yeah. So Elizabeth Olsen rallies together the res police officers, all 6 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and decide they're going to go to this security area, because essentially these guys are not Native Americans. They're pulled in by the oil company to work as security. They live there. There's trailers set up. They live there and they guard the installation. Meanwhile, Jeremy Renner is going to go check out these snowmobile tracks. So you kind of have this side by side storyline happening for about 15 minutes or so. Jeremy Renner side, he comes across the snowmobile tracks, gets to the end where he can't go any further, hops off, grabs his rifle, and he comes across the mountain lion and the 2 cubs, but also comes across the body of the boyfriend. Now, while this is happening, Elizabeth Olsen's character and the res police are talking to a couple of security guards. There's an equal number on both sides. There's about 6 or so security guards and about 6 or so res police officers. And they have this kind of pissing match as to who has the authority here, because technically it's not res land, it's been purchased. So they're going to do them a favor by allowing them on to check out the trailers where the boyfriend was living. But at one point, the tension escalates to the point where everybody pulls their weapons. The securities, the res police, everybody pulls their weapon. They have this pissing match again. Elizabeth Olsen says, "I'm FBI. I'm the biggest dick here.
I have the jurisdiction. I have the overarching jurisdiction. Everyone stand the hell down." But
right. So they do at that point. Everybody lowers a weapon. Now, at this point, we go back to Jeremy Renner, who has tracked the snowmobile tracks to the same place that Elizabeth Olsen is.
Essentially north side of there, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere not too far north, but literally north up the mountainside, if you will, and then it lying beyond the trailers and everywhere where the
He's essentially in the tree line, um, literally above, like in the mountainous area behind the trailers, and he's watching Elizabeth Olsen and the res police go to the trailer. At which point she knocks on the door, and we have this flashback. And the flashback is the woman, the original body that was found. I forgot her name. The daughter.
The daughter.
Which reminds me, before I go into the flashback, there's a whole scene that we just totally glanced over, where Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner are at Jeremy Renner's place, and they have this conversation where he tells her about his daughter and what happened to her.
While he's making his own rounds.
Right. He's making his own ammunition, and he proceeds to tell her that basically the daughter had a party while they were out of town. Some friends showed up, a few friends turned into a lot of friends, and some people that didn't like her, and basically she disappeared. And he was never able to find her or find out what happened to her. Now, so it's at this point where I'm expecting him solving this case to simultaneously solve the daughter case. So that was a big disappointment for me when these two did not come together.
He's going to solve his daughter's case as well, but I'm thinking, no, by solving this, he finds some level of closure in general, right? Like, that's why he says he alludes to being a hunter. He alludes to being, to some degree a tracker. He hunts people, right? Multiple quotes in that movie I thought were like, they gave me rock hard for Jeremy Renner, because I was just like, man, this guy is super manly, right? He's like, that's what I do. I'm a hunter.
Yeah.
And then basically promises the dad in a very, stoic man type way, right? Like, he's like, oh, if you find them, take care of them. And he's like, what do you think I'm doing, Martin? Talking about the daughter.
DFAT Comics is the publishing branch of Don'tForgetATowel.com, the only place to travel geekly. Focusing on creator-owned and independent titles like Hollowed, Pursuit of Plastic, and Fairy, and many more. DFAT Comics will be a mix of genres appealing to every kind of reader. Join the new source of comic book entertainment with DFAT Comics.
Huge part of the movie, right, for him to finally unfold and kind of give Elizabeth Olsen's character that backstory of why he is essentially everything it looked like Jeremy Renner was doing in that movie was a chess move for an outdoorsman, right? Like everything was deliberate, methodical, and so he provided that though really quickly to Elizabeth Olsen's character. So
I wrote that down. I wrote Jeremy Renner badass. He plays a badass in this movie. He really does. He is. Him and the subplot are really the redeeming qualities of this movie, I think.
Yeah.
So we have
action scenes. I don't want to cut you off, but the action scenes were kind of although the last one, right, the culminating, we're about to get to it. But the one at the trailer, it's kind of, I don't know if that's how he views action. I don't know if that's how they just like, this is really what it looks like, like some blind shots, from her issued sidearm. I think he had a shotgun, the dude that was attempting to take her out, right? Like, it just looked it was almost too unrefined to where it takes away from that. But I guess he kind of redeems himself with this last bit. But even that it's short-lived, and you're about to describe it, and we'll see.
I mean, there isn't much action in the movie when it comes to there's no explosions. There is a few gunfights, but they're very quick, and there's not much to them. I think that does keep a level of realism to the action, but on the same token, it does kind of leave you. I think there was a lot of more potential for Jeremy Renner's character to be that much more badass if he was given the opportunity to. So we had the flashback. So she knocks on the trailer door where the roommate is supposedly inside because they want to look inside. They want to talk to the roommate, and they have this flashback. The flashback is the daughter knocking on the same trailer door. The door opens. It's the boyfriend, played by John Bernthal.
Plays Matt. Now it's all coming back to me. Matt and Natalie. That's your couple, right? That's your dynamic.
Same actor from Walking Dead, plays the Punisher. Phenomenal job in the Punisher. Have you watched that?
Yeah. I think I closed it out because obviously Daredevil and that.
Yeah.
Were two good ones. I thought Netflix did really well, but yeah, the Punisher, very good. I like how they adapted it for kind of a modern war era and everything. So. But yeah, Bernthal, again, kind of a surprise character, right? Like,
yeah, I was not expecting him to be in this movie at all.
You alluded to the flashback. Now think about it. Knock on the door, flashback, right?
Right.
Like her knock then initiates this flashback to how, to allow us to understand, Natalie, the dead girl, right? The girl found at the beginning of the movie, and Bernthal's character, how their relationship was, existed, right? So
yeah, so they don't go into much detail as to what started the relationship, but clearly they are boyfriend and girlfriend. So she knocks on the door, he answers, he pulls her in. They have this quick conversation where he basically says, "Yeah, the rest of the guys are out, drinking or hanging out. I didn't go. I wanted to hang out with you." Or she surprised him or something. They quickly go to coitus. Love that word, coitus.
Solid plug there.
They then are laying in bed together and they're sharing this moment of like, oh, when I get done with this, we should move to this place, and I want to move to this place. And they had this, a sweet, oh, we love each other so much. And that is quickly interrupted by the guys coming back. So this is where I feel like the ending was kind of wrote in. So we are to believe now that these guys that he works with, presumably friends with, they show up drunk. They proceed to start kind of harassing him and his girlfriend. Whoa, what were you guys doing in here? It kind of starts off kind of, childish as most of us military guys are. What were you guys doing, huh? And then his roommate starts taking it a little too far, trying to see his girlfriend. You always walk around here in these short shorts, and I want to get me a peek and blah blah. He's not going to stand for that, obviously. So yelling escalates to pushing, shoving, and before you know it, an all-out brawl breaks out. Now, for whatever reason, the other guys that show up drunk as well side with the a-hole guy, and the 5 or 6 of them proceed to knock him unconscious, knock her unconscious. She wakes up to them, or at least the roommate, raping her.
Defiling her, yeah.
Yeah. So the boyfriend manages to stop it. He kind of tackles the guys and signals to her, "Get out of here. Leave." At which point she leaves, and you're then led to believe that her fleeing that location led to her dying in the cold barefoot, 3 to 6 miles away.
6 miles.
And then they must have done something to him because obviously his body is found later as well.
Yeah.
So we're then brought back to present day, where the head of security, or the guy that's at least leading the security force, yells to the guy inside the trailer, something along the lines of, "Open the door. It's the FBI. They're standing directly in front of the door," which the sheriff takes as a signal and yells to Elizabeth Olsen, "Get out of the way," which unfortunately she does not recognize in time. Shotgun shell through the door sends her flying. Luckily, she's wearing a vest, and then all hell breaks loose. Gunfire from both ends. Everybody's getting shot. People are dying on both sides. But when the dust settles, there is 3 or 4 security officers still up, and the rest of the sheriff's department is down. Also, at this point, the roommate comes out of the trailer. He's got a shotgun, and Elizabeth Olsen's character, who again had a vest on, pulls her sidearm or attempts to get a weapon from on the ground. She's stopped, and they don't immediately shoot her. They do instead kind of do some sort of bad guy monologue, at which point Jeremy Renner's character, or at which point their head explodes. And and Jeremy Renner's character proceeds to pick them off with his sniper rifle from where he is. I
think a key add-on there, right? So like, again, minimal character development other than Elizabeth Olsen, Jeremy Renner, and then obviously some add-ins, right? But you were talking about the tension and everything amongst all these people, the sheriff's department and Olsen, and then the internal security element there at the trailer. There were several of them that had bruises, black eye, maybe some cuts or whatever.
Right. Yeah, because presumably this brawl that happened, Berthol's character was able to get a couple good hits on them.
Yeah, so I think that led to, that immediately led to some questions from Elizabeth Olsen and the sheriff's department, right? They're, hey, I like a couple of quick, I don't know, indicator questions, right? Like, oh, what seemed to happen, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I think that led to that doubt, the insistence that something was amiss, right? So I think when she's standing at that trailer and gets blasted off the steps from that shotgun through the door.
Yeah.
And then I believe there was even some type of machine gun fire from inside.
He pulled, I actually wrote that down. He pulls out a 50 cal and starts laying into where did the 50 cal come from?
I don't know. It was crazy though, because he's like when she knocks on the door, the lead security dude, right? He kind of steps down the steps and he makes that comment. And no clue it was going to play out the way it did, but I was like, oh, something's about to go down, because he was like, FBI's here, right in front of your door. And boom, right? Like even Graham Greene or whatever his name is, he called it, right? Like he's like, get out. But at that point, too late, chaos ensues. He dies.
So everybody's dead at this point. The roommate goes into the trailer and is able to kind of hop out the window on the other side and tries to take off on foot. Jeremy Renner comes down, takes Elizabeth Olsen's character inside, and she makes a comment like, one of them got away, and he said, I'm not worried about it. I'll get him, or I'll find him, whatever. She also makes another comment about it being a really bad day or a bad chain of events, to which he replies with the following quote: "Wolves don't kill unlucky deer; they kill the weak ones." And I liked that quote. First off, one could argue that wolves, if you're a deer and you die at the wolf's hand, you're pretty unlucky. But I like the point, which was, you gotta be strong if you don't want to die. Be strong, hang in there. She says, "Give me your radio. I'm going to call for a helicopter. You go after the other guy." And he replies with, "If I go after him, I'm not bringing him back." She says, "I know." So he goes after him, gets the guy, knocks him unconscious, and the guy comes to, and they are on top of a mountain, basically. He has removed the guy's shoes. He's barefoot, and tells him, "I just want to talk. I'm not law enforcement. I just want to talk." And he essentially gets a confession out of the guy. He says, if you tell me what happened, I'll let you go. And the guy tells him what happened reluctantly, to which point Jeremy Renner says, "Cool, you're free to go." And he's like, "What do you mean I'm free to go?" And he's like, "You're free to go. It's about 6 miles from here to the highway, which is your only hope. And that's exactly how far she ran. You're going to do the exact same thing she did." And he doesn't get more than 500 yards before he dies. Presumably the same way she did. The cold air freezes his lungs and he dies. And then after this, it's basically just a quick wrap up. He goes back, tells the father, basically, "I got him. Don't worry about it." And that's really it. It's really the end of the movie right there. I think him and Elizabeth Olsen's character have their normal, ending kind of wrap up. But Anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, yeah, I think I can understand why you saw the movie the way maybe as a middle of the road movie. I don't know how you feel about Rotten Tomatoes, but 88%, right? Which is obviously not the highest. I think there's some movies out there that have existed in the 95 to 99 range, but yeah,
So you're a listener to the podcast, correct?
I mean, I've listened to your podcast,
Okay, I appreciate that, by the way.
not all of them, but
Not all of them.
well, so I've listened to every one of them, just not all of them all the way through, right? Two all the way through, one I think it was the initial one, right? I came across and I was like, what is Bobby doing? And then I heard your plugs at the beginning of all of this, and I was like, whoa, this is wildly impressive.
I appreciate that. Thank you. One of the things that you might not have picked up on the podcast, if you haven't made it all the way through, is we have an ongoing gimmick here called Guess That Tomato, where we ask our people who are guests to guess the Rotten Tomato score.
I already know this.
You already know this.
Unless it's changed in like 6 months, but I doubt it.
The 88 score that you're referencing is factual, but it's actually the movie critics score. It is not the audience score.
92 or 93, right?
Usually ask our guests to pick the audience score. So being as you don't have that as readily available in your head as the critic score, let's do that first. Let's talk about the Rotten Tomato score. Matt, do you know what the audience score is for Wind River?
Audience score? No, I do not. I'm gonna go with it's definitely higher than the critic. I'll go with 93.
93. Okay, the next thing we do is I'm going to tell you 3 or so movies that are within 2 points of the audience score. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of movies that are very close to the same score as this movie, and then you'll have an option to change your score if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
So the first movie is Uncut Gems.
Ooh, Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, new to Netflix, very popular. Second movie is Mortal Kombat Legends, which I don't know if you've seen, but I mean, clearly the Mortal Kombat movies are known for being high quality, great movies.
That's a cartoon, yeah?
It is a cartoon, yes.
Okay.
Very good. I'm impressed by your knowledge of that. Yeah. You have kids. Have you seen the movie Missing Link?
No, I haven't seen it. I have not seen it, but obviously I've watched portions of it. I think they saw that when I was out of pocket for a bit. So,
okay, well, I'll give you 3 more popular ones: Shazam, Spider-Man: Far From Home, and John Wick 3. All these movies are within 2 points of the same score as Wind River. So, Matt, do you want to change your guess?
Yes.
Okay, you originally said 93. What is your guess now?
So you're saying those last 3 are within 2 points of it?
Correct.
Then I'm just going to go with an even 90.
Matt, you are the first guest to get it 100% right. The score is 90.
Yeah, that's just too many audience critics of Spider-Man: Far From Home. I think it was, yeah, okay.
So the audience scored at 90, critics scored at 88. Really good ratings. I mean, for a movie that did not go wide release, isn't a very well-known movie, to be that high is quite impressive.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I guess I would like to know how many like legitimate audience critiques or people have taken time to like review it, right? Because I think I saw some initial IMDb like 6 or so months ago, and everybody loved it, right? Like underrated film, right up Sheridan's, modern or contemporary Western. So I'd have to say I did like Hell or High Water more, but I thought overall the plot of this, I don't know, right? I gravitated to this movie more. But I think if I had to like sit down and if I had to watch one on repeat 30 times, I'm going Hell or High Water just because of Jeff Bridges and his, delivery and how he kind of Yeah, and then the just the robbery and Ben Foster. Yeah, I think characters and everything, hell or high water, but plot for some reason I don't know if it's just too perfectly simple for me, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you liked about the movie, I thought were also good. I just don't think it saved it enough.
and I
Um,
think the I mean I know it's hard to really describe it in a small time frame here on a podcast, but man, really like if you think about some of the visceral reaction you had to the when the friends piled into the trailer and
mhm.
you could see that Bernthal's character like truly cared for her and realized he had put her in jeopardy, right? I think
Yeah,
there were some things that you're thinking, no, this guy's like going to stand up and protect her, but he realized like ultimately by her coming there, he had and him continuing to foster that relationship, even though they cared obviously a lot about each other. And you get in that small snapshot of that flashback, you also obviously see a lot of his sadness develop instantaneously, right? Because
right.
like, oh, what have I done? Like I've
Well,
potentially put her in harm's way. So
I mean, he goes on to survive the attack and become the Punisher. So I mean,
yeah, oh yeah.
that's
He's
a sequel.
got to fuel that hatred. So
So one of the other things we like to do here is I have 5 standard questions that I've developed that I like to ask every guest about the movie. They're the exact same questions I ask every guest, but I believe they apply to every movie differently. So question number 1, what aspect of the storytelling was done right? What aspect was done wrong? And who do you give credit for?
I think he did a pretty good job. And you let me know if I'm off base here. But I think he did a pretty good job of kind of selling the what would again I said austere earlier, but I don't think that's necessarily the word I'm looking for. He did a good job of selling like the downtrodden nature or culture that is on exists on the reservation. And I think he did that for good reason, right? Like he clearly had a point he was trying to get across both at the throughout the movie and then at the end of it, right? When he puts some of the facts and figures about crime.
So funny thing about that is he had some investigators or people that worked for him, at least assistants or whatever. He said, "Go out and find me some statistics about death and murder on reservations that I can put at the end of the movie." And after some looking into, they came back and said, "We don't have any statistics. There none exist."
Facts
And he said, "Well, then that's our statistic."
yeah.
And that's what he puts at the end is that there is no statistics on kidnapping and murder for reservation crimes because they just simply don't exist. They're not part of the national bank of information.
Yeah. So that resonated with me again because I look at situations like we're constantly talking about our kind of our American platform abroad, but I always think about like, well, think about all the things that are just wrong and aren't being righted. And this is one of those things I just feel like people aren't aware of it, whether they have a feeling or a stance on it. The fact that we're living kind of ignorant to these situations. I think that's the biggest thing that stuck out to me is, so it takes a lot for, obviously his movies have done well, the small snapshot of movies and shows that he's kind of he's written, but the fact that he's taking that platform and really putting it into existence for people to not only get entertained but then be educated on the back end. So pretty significant. But I think one of the things he did, I guess I wouldn't even say did poorly, right, is or leaves us to really assume a lot and not know is again what the FBI's reach or what their true consideration of like jurisdictional justice and provision to these reservations is, because obviously that's a problem set, but I've now become potentially like very biased against like our actual assistance to reservations based on this movie. When do I know, right? Like I haven't taken the time to research, but I imagine like the FBI is a little bit more serving in that capacity but again, right, he's trying to paint a picture. And so that was the one thing I was like, okay, I have a feeling Elizabeth Olsen's not rolling up in a Tahoe
right
in sub 20 degree weather. Like I think we got to give to some degree the government apparatus a little more credit for how they're going to treat something like that.
I mean, at this point, anything's possible.
Exactly. saying.
The last few years have taught us anything. It's sad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is it was an easy plug to put this character in there instead of sending like a wildly capable individual in that Tahoe. And again, that's how he wrote it, so that's what it is. But you gotta think that then left you to easily assume, oh, yep, no one cares about the res.
Right.
I think he painted some of that. So it's not an accurate portrayal of how it would actually be. Every case is handled. So, but that's just me.
So question number 2, what is the biggest unanswered question for you about the movie? And do you think it was done intentionally?
Yeah. Jeremy Renner's daughter, right? He said, I can't remember who he was talking to. But yeah, he was like, it was like how his daughter died, and it was like, same, right? Oh, did she die like Emily? And then she died from the cold. And then I think whoever he was talking to was like, so she died like Emily, right? So Emily's her daughter. So now we know, like, oh, Emily's out in the cold. Like, did she die? Same thing, barefoot, found in the same type of situation. Right. I mean, or did she run away from home because she couldn't stand it any longer? Did they suppress her, or overparent her, right? Like, maybe he's blaming himself, and we still don't know that. Like, we have no idea. So, again, right, kind of aggravating. But yeah.
Do you think it was done intentionally?
Oh, absolutely, right. Like, again, because I think it was like the character that he's supposed to embody is this. Like, they divorced over it, right? They still had an amenable relationship, but nothing that is going to be fixed or patched at this point. So, like, if they had some true closure, then it would have left us to assume that, well, okay, why can't you guys come back together and patch things up, right? So I think that was showing, like, again, the hardened life and nature that they've become accustomed to, right? And it really allowed Jeremy Renner to be who he is, this dude that lives in a man shack, and he's making his own, ammunition and killing people from afar and making them disappear, right? Like, he had his own version of Punisher ego.
So you think he transitioned to that type of lifestyle after his daughter, or do you think that was always kind of how he was?
No, I think he had that Western approach to life, very like methodical, feet propped up, smoking a pipe, calculating. But it wasn't until it took the loss of his daughter to harden him to the point of, like, not to, geez Louise, not to make it sound too negative, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think he is ever going to see anything as like a desirable or successful end state, right? Like,
right.
He takes out an animal, he's just on to the next hunt. So, like, there's never going to be like a time where he hangs his hat on something at this point in life.
I mean, he does show a softer side when he has these interactions with his son, which are few and far between in the movie, but you do get this sense that he is, maybe he's putting on a face in front of his son. I mean, clearly somebody who's lost a child, they're going to be very cold and very recluse-esque to the world, but he does have these moments where his son is around, and he softens up and kind of laughs a little bit. But you do, and this plays into Jeremy Renner's acting ability. You do get the sense that it's kind of a front he's putting on for his son.
Yeah. Well, so that was who he was talking to, right? The son's Casey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I needed you to say son, because that's who he was talking to. Casey asked the very basic question. Oh, so she died like Emily,
mm-hmm.
right? And so him having that very transparent and like sobering conversation with his young son, Emily's brother, right? And him
mm-hmm.
saying, so she died, like Emily. And he's like, yep. So I just think that shows like the level of like, hey man, life is going to be difficult. And the quicker you come to kind of expect that, or he even, when he's talking to, I don't know if he's telling her the story or alluding to it at that point, but he's talking to her character, Elizabeth Olsen's character, and he's like, we tried to be so careful with our daughter and tried to plan for everything, right? And she was always good, but at one point in time, he says, I let my guard down, So I think what you're talking about, right? He's no longer going to let his guard down.
Right.
In consideration to his son, in consideration to just his life going forward. He's never going to feel that sense of arrival or emotional release, right? Like nope, I'm going to be Stonewall, and I will exist like this and at least be more content with life and what it brings me. So
Right.
again, just a very interesting approach.
Next question. Personal connection is important. Was there anything that happened in the movie that reminded you of a real life story that happened to you?
No, I'm not. I mean, you put it out there, badass. There's nothing like even close to that.
Well, you are a father of a daughters.
Yeah, I think
daughter.
that's the biggest thing though, is right when he's dissecting the situation and he's looking at things, again, he just said so many things that I feel, right? Like obviously not with that Wyoming version of justice out on, and in the wild, by no means, right? But a lot of the things he said or kind of implied is just generally like how I feel about raising kids, right? And never being vulnerable and never letting, never feeling too comfortable with, your kids and where they're at in life, that you can't.
100%. I mean, and that's ultimately the struggle we face as parents, right? You want to be the protector. It's your job to make sure they are safe, and provide them a place where they can be safe and comfortable and open and honest and so on. But on the same token, as they grow older, you do have to allow them to experience the world unfiltered and, come into contact with the things that ultimately they're going to face on a daily basis without you around. So it's a trade-off at any age, really. It's a trade-off between being the protector and allowing them to scuff the knee and react on their own.
I think the Bernthal thing too, I connected with, like, obviously again, right, very emotional, like antagonizing situation, but just again, I got a good snapshot of how that dude felt. Like he felt like he did something wrong, but he also, like, I think kind of what the parents were alluding to, right? Like you either shelter too much and she doesn't, your daughter or sons, they don't find love, or they don't find, inspiration, or they don't find that, their first connect point in life where they're really like, I don't know, starting to say, okay, this is my life. Like I'm my guiding direction, so to speak, right? Like, or I'm guiding my own life direction. So I think he, again, that situation in itself, I was able to connect with, like, no way, no shape, like in no way would I allow this. I will go down swinging, right? Like before I allow some kind of crime or criminal action against someone that I care about, right? So it's just that's what I got from that situation, is like he, whether he loved her or whether right or wrong or indifferent, right? He was willing to lay his life on the line, and he did. So
yeah. Number 4, what is the most important sequence in the movie?
Oh, I don't know, man. That's a tough one, because I think a lot of people called it a slow burn, right? Like
yeah.
So it's like to say each sequence. I mean, I guess if you're talking about culminating like sequence, right? It's the time they showed up and kind of did their gun down on each other initially, right? They all drew from their holsters. They're all, and then they de-escalate. But I think the viewer still knows something's going to go down, even, right? So that's the most important sequence as far as like just perpetuating the end state. But I really do think the most significant piece was the beginning of the film, where you're kind of the parts you described, right, of Jeremy Renner hunting, Jeremy Renner loading. Like, I don't know, man, that was like, they could have played they could have had no dialogue and just a whiny Western song, but you still would have known, you would have been like, oh, there's my John Wayne of the movie, right? And this is the character development. So
yeah, I mean, at the point where you're seeing him make his own ammunition, you're like, well, yeah, of course he does. Like, of course he makes his own ammunition.
Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna go with the simple answer of the gun down situation, right? Like the high noon, everybody's tense, and then I mean, and all hell breaks loose, right? Because that was needed, right, to really show Renner's final culminating point as a character. So
Nice. And then my final question: if you could recast two roles in the film, what roles would they be? Who would you recast in them and why?
okay, so I'm gonna keep it easy, Oof, fairly easy, um, and just go with the two main characters
Okay.
because I don't really feel like you know. I could go even easier and say, hey, take the reservation sheriff off, or take one of the oil pipeline dudes and put Sheridan in there, right? Because he's played a cop, he's played a sheriff. So
Yeah.
simple fix. But no, if I had to like recast, I mean, the two main characters that like the or were for the movie.
Yeah, I mean
And
they really are the only two characters in the movie. I mean, obviously there is at least a dozen other characters, but as far as screen time goes, these two are 90% of the movie.
yeah, so that's why I would say like that question, I'm not doing you any justice
No, you're fine.
unless I cast those two because it's a pointless question if not. I'm gonna go Michelle Monaghan instead of Elizabeth Olsen. Um,
Okay.
I know that's a throw. She's usually a rom com, but or no, I backtrack. Rachel McAdams. I feel like
Rachel McAdams.
I feel like
That's
she can. I feel like she is a version of Elizabeth Olsen, Emily Blunt. And I know that's hard, like, but yeah, she can put her hair up. She can be an FBI agent of sorts. Same thing, right? Like, again, if we're talking about matching qualities of actress, right? That's who I think you're going to get a very, I don't want to say similar performance, but you can draw from her. And then I don't know if I had to do a Jeremy Renner replacement in this, I would go with someone kind of, I guess, abstract or not common, like not well known. I honestly, because we talked about it, I keep going back to him, but I don't know how well he would do in this role. But like I see Charlie Hunnam in a version of this.
yeah, I could it's a good pick actually. I could totally see him playing Jeremy Renner's character. I think
Yeah.
he has that same kind of cold, type of demeanor he could pull off. I don't know if I agree with Rachel McAdams. She's not an action person. I mean, she has some action in her with Sherlock Holmes movies and stuff like that, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I think honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I would recast. I think the two that Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner play their parts pretty perfectly. Um, like we said, Jeremy Renner is playing the same guy he always does, but he plays this guy very well. And Elizabeth Olsen has a phenomenal way of walking between the attractive, sexy female lead and the hardened badass. I mean, she again, she portrays the green FBI agent who is really trying to do her job. You don't get the sense that she's just like, "Oh, I'm new and somebody's got to help me." It's like, "No, I'm new, but I'm going to figure it out," and I'm going to get the job done.
Hmm.
Which I think is hard to pull off.
I don't think there's a lot of people in her age range that have her range of portrayal, right? She does seem kind of like overly solemn though, so that's why I was saying like I mean, even if you inject a little more upbeat, like promising like return, I think you still get a decent movie, and it's like, oh, okay, this person is like proactive. They feel like they can do some good here. They can do some justice. With her, I just was like the whole time, I'm like, does she actually think she's doing any good? I don't know, So, but again, right, very unassuming portrayal, or just it was like she was there, she was learning and absorbing so much. So yeah, I don't know that I can really think of any actress that's going to step into that role and do it the same or deliver the same kind of results.
Yeah, well put. So Wind River It comes out in 2017. It's got a budget of $11 million. It makes $45 million at the box office, which is insane. For a movie to do even double its budget is considered a success. And this one went on to do 4 times its budget. So really successful movie. It comes out August of 2017. Or excuse me, technically it comes out in January, but it gets re-released in August because post Sundance limited release. Overall, pretty decent movie. I say if you got some time and you want to watch something that I don't think requires 100% of your attention, this is a good movie to fill that void.
Yeah. Yep.
One last thing, Matt, before we sign off here, it is a strong belief of the owners of Don't Forget a Towel that everybody geeks out on something. It might not always be comic books and movies. It could be your own personal geeky thing. So we ask everybody on our podcast, Matt, what are you geeking out on right now?
Oh man, it's unfortunately it's an easy pick, man. I'm geeking out on comics. I'm geeking out on the Marvel, the continuation of the Marvel universe, right? So that's
when you say comics, are you referring to the comic book movies, or are you actually reading the comic books?
No, I'm off the comic books. I'm geeking out just on the movies, right? And I think I left comics behind like 2 or 3 years ago. I was reading some of the graphic novels and stuff, and trying to see where they may go forward. But there's too many spin-offs. There's too many interdimensional or dimensional like new things, so I can't keep up with everything, so especially with 3 kids, man. But yeah, I'm excited because I mean, just depending on like we're watching we've watched the onset of the Marvel universe. What they've been around for
10 years now, 23 movies.
Yeah, so I mean, by the time my kids are like teenagers and Blu-ray and 4K and that's all antiquated, and they're watching some type of Palm portable VR
holographic device. Yeah,
holographic. But either way, I mean, again, it's hard not to kind of nerd out on that. And then, yeah, man, that's where I'm at, and I'm geeking out on superfood.
Superfood. So before I have questions about superfood, but before we get to that, what is your favorite Marvel movie? Have you seen them all?
All the main ones, yeah. Even to the point on my last deployment, I think I watched them all. We watched them all in order.
Wow.
Yeah.
Release order or cinematic order?
Cinematic order.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Very, very interesting. What is your favorite?
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm able to answer that question. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Who's your favorite character?
I love Thor Ragnarok. Honestly, it's
really that's an interesting pick. I'm sure we'll have some comments from the listeners on that pick.
That's
everybody has their own. I'm personally a fan of some of the movies that some of the fans weren't big on, but Ragnarok is arguably lower on most lists. So that's an interesting pick. Yeah. So tell me, what is superfood? Go ahead, give me your plug.
Okay, so superfood, not necessarily. Zac Efron, you've seen his new show?
I have not.
On Netflix. Okay, well, everybody down to earth or whatever it's called, right? He's touring or has already, right? These shows were already filmed, but touring locations all around the world concerning kind of a holistic societal healthy living, healthy returns to the earth, healthy returns to wherever these people live, right? And getting away from fossil fuels and getting away from processed foods and getting just healthy life, right? And they have that ability. Netflix, it's like, Zac Efron, you're attractive, we're going to give you the dude that got him in shape is the dude that came up with Shakeology, right? Darren Olean, right? Formulator of Shakeology. So this dude has a pretty good book. I think I'm calling it Superfood, but let me see what his book is. I called it Superfood, but that's what I'm reading, right? I highly recommend if you're just kind of curious about, I don't know. I don't really want to say like pro healthy lifestyle. He can give you a lot of things to consider just in the food you're eating, how your body responds. Obviously 34 years old and the Marine Corps is still requiring me to do a couple of things that are considered active. Uh, so because of that, like I just, sorry. His book is Super Life, but it's based off of, again, whole concept. So a little foreign to me, a little, I mean, he approaches veganism from a different mindset, right? Like we shouldn't be eating meat because animals and, I don't know, coexistence and all that. So that's a little outside my frame of work, but or in my thought processes. But I do highly recommend it just from an enlightened standpoint. So, if you're thinking about putting a donut in your mouth, he'll kind of give you some new thoughts on that, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess that's a better answer than saying I'm geeking out on the Marvel universe and its continuation. That's an easy answer. So.
No, I like both answers, man.
Super Life, man. 5 forces that'll make you healthy. So there you go.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this, Matt.
I appreciate the opportunity. I think ultimately this was at least a B plus movie, but it sounds like it was more middle of the road for you. So
well, thanks for sharing it with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I got to turn on the fan.
You got to turn what? What'd you say?
I got to turn on the fan.
It's a little warm.
Yeah, it's California weather.
California. And then what's the plan after that? What do you want to do?
I don't know.
Well,
Yes.
It's all for the best.
No, baby, I'm on the computer. I love you. I lock the door.
Aww.
That's my daughter, the 7-year-old.
Horrible.